Welcome to the debate. It is 1990. A massive curtain drops on an arena stage, revealing a heavy steel cage. And the music blaring through the speakers is this blistering, distorted hard rock anthem.
Right.
But inside that cage isn't a pop star. It's a live, fully grown Black Panther just pacing the floor.
It is such an unbelievable image.
It really is. Today, we are asking what it takes to start a cultural revolution. Because just 1 year prior, in 1989, Janet Jackson was facing an industry that expected a very specific, predictable formula. She had just reshaped pop music with her previous album, Control.
And the label executives, they wanted the safe bet. They demanded Control Part 2. They specifically requested a gossip-driven record that would cash in on her famous family's tabloid scandals.
Exactly. But instead, what the world received was a tele-musical manifesto, a gritty post-apocalyptic concept album tackling racism, poverty, and systemic injustice called Rhythm Nation 1814.
She walked into a boardroom expecting bubblegum and just dropped a radical political text right on the table. I mean, it is the absolute definition of an industry curveball.
Oh, absolutely. And the central tension we are unpacking today is how that curveball actually functioned. Was the revolutionary power of this manifesto primarily driven by its punishing industrial sonic architecture or by its stark militaristic visual utopia? I maintain that the inescapable audio film of the 1814 architecture is what really force-fed the evening news to a generation of youth. The relentless industrial soundscape, the literal noise of urban decay engineered into a groove, that was the true engine of the revolution.
See, I think you're giving the audio just way too much credit for what the eyes were doing. I mean, you can make all the noise you want, but audio alone does not shatter the cultural paradigm of the late 1980s.
You don't think so?
No, because radio was already full of political songs. It was the black and white utopia, the stark, monochrome military fashion, and the hyper-disciplined choreography that physically erased color lines. That visual language single-handedly drafted the blueprint for modern global pop. Honestly, without the visuals, the sound is just noise.
Okay, but we have to look at the foundational code of this project, which is entirely structural and sonic. When I talk about the genius of the 1814 architecture, I am talking about meaning woven directly into the audio sequence. The number 1814 isn't just an aesthetic tag thrown on the album cover.
Right.
First off, it acts as an alphanumeric cipher. The letter R for rhythm is the 18th letter of the alphabet. N for nation is the 14th. Put them together, you get 1814. But 1814 is also the exact year Francis Scott Key wrote the American national anthem.
Which is a fascinating historical anchor.
Exactly. She was explicitly aiming to create a new anthem for the 1990s, one designed for a highly fractured country.
But the brilliance of that title is actually the visual and political framing it requires. Like, mapping an 1860s post-Civil War concept onto it is what gives it teeth.
Yes. The 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution, the amendment guaranteeing equal protection under the law and citizenship rights to formerly enslaved people. She is embedding heavy systemic political theory directly into dance music.
Right.
It is a 20-track audio film. She constructs these interludes that act like cinematic scene transitions.
Oh, the interludes are crucial.
Right? Take interlude TV, for example. You hear the rapid mechanical clicking of a television remote. You hear snippets of news anchors reporting on tragedy, violence, and urban decay. And then it snaps seamlessly into the groove. She understood that her audience consisted of teenagers glued to MTV.
Yeah, the MTV generation.
She used the audio medium to trap them in a soundscape where they had no choice but to confront the decay of the inner city, before the beat even allowed them to dance.
I understand the ambition of an audio film. I do. But an audio narrative still requires a physical manifestation to change behavior on a mass scale. Teenagers might hear a television clicking on a track, but what made this an unavoidable manifesto was the 30-minute telemusical film shot at the abandoned Glenarm power plant in Pasadena.
Which is just a staggering piece of work.
Staggering. Jackson and her director, Dominic Sena, made a deliberate, incredibly financially risky decision to shoot entirely in black and white. Think about the context here. This is the hyper-colorful, neon-soaked MTV era.
The era of spandex and hairspray, yeah.
Exactly. And she delivers film noir. Why? To literally and metaphorically erase color lines on the screen. The grayscale strips away the distraction of pop glamour and forces you to focus on the unified front.
The aesthetic was definitely a stark contrast to what was on television at the time. I'll give you that.
It was a complete visual coup. But, the true radicalism wasn't just the film stock. It was the military fashion. We are talking about unisex black uniforms, metallic badges, heavy bandoliers, and that iconic key earring dangling from her ear.
Which symbolized the unlocking of knowledge, right?
Yes! By dressing her male and female dancers identically in combat gear, Jackson completely destroyed the music industry's demand for female submissiveness. There is absolutely no male gaze to be found in the Rhythm Nation film. None.
It is aggressively non-compliant in that regard.
Precisely. She replaced the expectation of a smiling, submissive pop princess with an egalitarian, disciplined army. That specific visual of women and men standing shoulder to shoulder, completely stripped of traditional gender presentation, that is what forced the culture to pay attention. The look was the manifesto. The music was just the soundtrack to the march.
Okay, but you are ignoring where that discipline actually came from. That visual army needed ground to march on, and that ground was the industrial sound of New Jack Swing, architected by Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis.
Well,
what they were doing at Flight Time Studios wasn't just standard pop production, it was audio journalism. They created an urban cacophony. New Jack Swing generally blended R&B vocals with hip-hop beats, but Jam and Lewis took it into a terrifyingly industrial space. Instead of relying on standard synthesizers, they literally weaponized the sounds of the street.
You're talking about the sampling of literal garbage cans.
Literally. Breaking glass, the slamming of trash can lids, stomping boots, metal crashing against metal. They took these abrasive, violent sounds of a decaying city and used them as percussion.
It's brilliant production, sure.
They took 13 raw, cold drum sounds and painstakingly tuned them through a sequential circuits drum tracks machine. For those who aren't audio engineers, the drum tracks is an early 8-bit drum machine. Taking a chaotic analog sound, like breaking glass, recording it, pitching it down, and forcing it onto a perfectly quantized, rigid digital grid creates a deeply unsettling effect.
Right.
It sounds like a massive, unstoppable factory press. This wasn't just a beat, it was the terrifying heartbeat of a society on the brink of collapse.
Okay, but raw noise, no matter how brilliantly engineered or tuned through an 8-bit machine, is just chaos without a visual organizing principle.
Wait, let me finish the sonic thought, because the chaos was anchored. There's a legendary story where Jimmy Jam heard a tiny 2-bar guitar breakdown in Sly and the Family Stone's song, "Thank You, Falatin Me Be Myself Again."
Oh, I love this story.
He rushed to the studio, sampled that microsecond of audio through an AMS 1580, an early digital delay unit, and layered it over a heavy Lindrum beat. That aggressive, repetitive loop became the title track. By using the digital sampler to grab a piece of 1970s funk and turning it into a mechanical backbone, they anchored this chaotic future shock in Black musical history. It's a direct conversation with the past. The music demanded the militant aesthetic.
I fundamentally disagree. I mean, you have breaking glass and trash cans. Fine. You have a looped funk sample? Great. But breaking glass just sounds like a mistake until a visual choreography gives it rhythm.
A mistake? Come on.
It was the choreography by Anthony Thomas and Terry Bixler that brought order to that chaos. They invented an entirely new visual language called formation. They took the militaristic cadence, the sharp, rigid movements of a military drill where the shoulders are locked and the spine is straight, and fused it with the fluidity of street dance, like popping and locking.
The physical contrast between the upper and lower body in that routine is striking, I will admit.
It is physically exhausting just to watch, and it was unprecedented
MTV at the time was entirely about the soloist. It was about loose, seductive dancing or a lead singer with backup dancers just swaying in the background.
Right, very casual.
But Jackson presented a tight, synchronized phalanx, everyone moving as one single organism. That exact visual of synchronized, hard-hitting formation became the absolute standard for global pop. Think about Beyoncé. As a child, her group, the Smooth Dancers, literally won competitions by mirroring the Rhythm Nation routines.
Wow, really?
Yes, that exact visual lineage runs straight from the Glenarm power plant all the way to Beyoncé's own formation decades later. It built the entire K-pop industry. Every idol group operating today that uses synchronized, concept-based military aesthetics is executing the visual blueprint drawn up in 1989. The sound of New Jack Swing was a product of its time. It sounds like the late 80s, but the visual of the formation is eternal.
Look, you're confusing the visual legacy with the mechanism that actually shattered the industry's walls at the time. If we are talking about what truly shocked the system and broke paradigms, we have to look at the ultimate sonic anomaly on this manifesto. Track 16, Black Cat.
Ah, the hard rock detour.
It is not a detour. It is the masterpiece of the album. Here you have an artist entirely categorized by the industry in the dance pop and R&B lanes. She decides the album needs a dose of pure, unadulterated aggression to match the political fury of the lyrics. So she writes a hard rock anthem. And it's vital to note, she wrote the main riff entirely by herself.
Right.
She then collaborated with heavyweights like Nuno Betancourt of Extreme and Vernon Reid of Living Colour to build this thick, blistering wall of glam metal sound. And here is the impossible feat. Black Cat topped the Billboard Hot 100, which is massive on its own, but it also crossed over into the top 10 of the Hot R&B and Hip Hop Songs chart.
Getting heavy metal guitars onto R&B radio stations in 1990 was virtually unheard of.
It completely shattered the segregated boundaries of radio formats. A Black female artist taking a blistering hard rock track to the top of the R&B charts, it earned her a Grammy nomination in the Best Female Rock Vocal Performance category. It made her the only artist in history to receive Grammy nominations across pop, dance, rock, rap, and R&B. That is sonic rebellion. She didn't just dress up like a soldier. She took a sonic battering ram to the institutional walls of genre segregation.
The rock crossover is historically significant. I will concede that. But I do not buy that the sound of Black Cat alone left the deepest scar on the culture. The true shock of Black Cat was experiential. It was highly visual. To understand it, you have to look at the Rhythm Nation World Tour in 1990. This was a massive $2 million debut headlining tour.
Huge.
Undertaking.
Huge.
And during the live performance of Black Cat, she deployed world-class illusionary magic to hammer home the theme of captivity and power.
You are talking about the cage trick.
The cage trick. She is locked in a steel cage by her dancers. The music is blaring. Those heavy Vernon Reid guitars are screaming through the arena. They cover the cage with a cloth. A second later, they pull it away, and she has vanished. In her place, prowling inside the locked cage, is a live, full-grown Black Panther.
The logistics of doing that in a live arena are just terrifying.
It was an audacious visual metaphor. And the irony, the deeply practical, messy reality of live touring, is that this extreme commitment to visual dominance actually interfered with the show.
How so?
They eventually had to remove the panther from the tour entirely. Why? Because the animal would urinate on the stage, making the floor too slippery for her dancers to execute that high-precision choreography we just talked about.
Oh, wow.
Right? But the fact that they went to those extreme lengths, risking the physical safety of a multi-million-dollar production and the dancers, just to deliver an unforgettable visual metaphor of power, proves my point. The spectacle was the primary weapon. The music was just setting the stage for the illusion.
The spectacle is memorable, I grant you. But you cannot divorce the financial and cultural success of that tour from the sheer architectural brilliance of the album's audio journey. The reason millions of people bought tickets to that tour, the reason the album became a juggernaut, is how the audio structure transitions over its runtime.
Okay, walk me through that.
Well, the first half of the record is this harsh industrial social critique. The metal, the glass, the news interludes. But the architecture of the album shifts. By the time you get to the back half to tracks like Love Will Never Do Without You, the aggressive percussion softens. The heavy drum machines give way to lush vocal harmonies and emotional vulnerability.
The pop elements?
Exactly. That audio journey, taking the listener from the harsh realities of the street into a space of interpersonal salvation, is what anchored 7 top 5 Billboard hits across 3 calendar years, 1989, 1990, and 1991. The sound had the structural integrity to sustain relevance for years. A panther in a cage is a great visual gimmick, but you can't replay a magic trick in your car for 3 years. It was a perfectly engineered audio experience.
But look at what happens when that experience leaves the West. Look at the global expansion of the Rhythm Nation. If it was purely about an engineered audio journey transitioning from industrial to pop, why did the live visual presence spark a literal cultural revolution in Asia? Fast forward to her 1995 Bangkok concert at the Wanmark Indoor Stadium. The Western music industry had this deeply ingrained, highly patronizing stereotype about the quiet Asian audience. The assumption was that Asian audiences were reserved, that they would sit, clap politely, but would never engage in the visceral, bodily, deafening way Western audiences did.
A massive, culturally blind misconception.
Completely blind. When Janet Jackson brought that militaristic visual precision, that unyielding physical power to Bangkok, the response was deafening. The madness and the roar of the Thai crowd completely shocked the Western crew. They had never heard an arena that loud.
That's incredible.
It destroyed the stereotype forever. And let's be clear, it wasn't just because they liked the synth bass or the snare tone. It was because the visual language of Rhythm Nation transcends language barriers. The unity, the physical strength, the breaking of gender norms through uniform. You don't need to speak English to understand that ideology. It was a visual ideology that translated instantly, proving that her aesthetic was a universal language of empowerment.
You know, it's fascinating because as we dig deeper into the mechanics of both the audio and the visual, it becomes increasingly clear that trying to isolate one from the other is like trying to separate the heartbeat from the blood. You mentioned the breaking of gender norms, and that brings us to the core of what this manifesto really achieved on a macro level.
Yeah, we are talking about an undeniable masterpiece of Black feminist excellence.
Without question. When you look at the sheer weight of what she accomplished, using the medium of dance pop to map out the intersections of race, gender, and class, you have to place this telemusical manifesto on the exact same tier of cultural importance as the literature of Toni Morrison.
Oh, absolutely.
Or the intersectional theory developed by Kimberly Crenshaw, which examines how different forms of inequality operate together and exacerbate each other. Jackson was exploring that exact same intersectional theory. She just chose a different medium. Instead of an academic paper, she chose an 808 drum machine, heavy guitar distortion, and the television screen.
And in doing so, she completely eradicated the false binary that existed in the music industry at the time. There was this prevailing notion that if you made dance music, it had to be vacuous. It was supposed to be about escaping the club, romantic entanglements, or, superficial joy.
Right, just turn your brain off and dance.
Exactly. Jackson proved irrevocably that dance music could be intensely conscious. It could be aggressively political, tackle systemic poverty, and highlight educational disparity without ever losing the groove.
She showed that you could take the hardest realities of urban decay, put them over a new jack swing beat, and make the entire world dance to it. She proved that a woman can be a militant political leader standing in combat boots demanding social justice and simultaneously be a glamorous, chart-topping pop icon. Those identities were no longer mutually exclusive.
She forced the world to look at a Black woman in total artistic control. She was writing the riffs, she was producing the tracks alongside Jam and Lewis, she was dictating the relentless choreography, and she was refusing to smile for the camera just because a label executive thought a softer look would sell more records.
Yeah.
The visual of the unyielding army and the sonic elements of the street were locked in a symbiotic embrace to deliver a singular message of defiance.
So, despite our different angles of approach, we arrive at a unified realization. The Rhythm Nation cannot be neatly divided into just sound or sight. The audio film and the black and white utopia are twin pillars of the exact same revolution.
Which brings us to the final brilliant trick of the 1814 architecture. The Rhythm Nation is not a physical place on a map. You can't point to it. You can't issue a visa for it.
It has no borders.
It is a utopian state that exists temporarily but powerfully wherever the beat is played. The moment that Sly and the Family Stone sample kicks in, the nation forms. The listener is drafted into the army, and the moment the music stops, the nation dissolves back into the ether, waiting to be summoned again by the next person who hits play.
We started this discussion talking about how the industry expects a clean, predictable formula. They wanted a straightforward pop sequel. But Janet Jackson built a Trojan Horse. She hid a militant, deeply intersectional political manifesto inside the sleek, undeniable rhythms of an MTV dance record.
Yeah, she did.
She smuggled diagnostic truths about society through muddy industrial noise and black and white combat gear. And in doing so, she built a nation that outlasted the executives who doubted her.
A nation that requires no passport, just the rhythm.
Thank you for joining us on The Debate. Keep listening.